Anyway, it's such a pleasure to be here to talk about the client connection. And before we start, and this is a topic that is so relevant today in the industry. We cannot underestimate the importance of connecting with clients. But before we start the discussions, I thought I'll just take a moment because I'm so honored to be sitting with, very experienced players in the industry. So I thought I'll just introduce them before I set out the context for today's discussion. So immediately next to me is Alice. She comes from Public Mutual, and for those of you who are in the industry, you definitely know that Public Mutual is a dominant player in the industry. They've got one of the biggest distribution channels. And what is very good to have Alice here, she is a sales strategist. And she also deals, with the unit trust agency aspect of the business. So she knows the business in and out, and especially in connecting with clients. Next to her, I have Encik Muzni, CEO, Maybank Asset Management, as you know. And Muzni and I met, what was it? 22 years ago. And so, when you talk about client connection, one of the key things you're going to hear today is actually long-term relationship. So we all have got long-term relationships in the industry. We are all here. So very good to have Muzni with us because he's got a very varied experience. I think a term we always hear in the industry, he pivoted from being an analyst to asset management, to Middle East experience, to dealing with high net worth investors, and now he's bringing all that experience to the Malaysian landscape, the Malaysian industry. So he will have varying perspectives to share with us on that. Next to Cik Muzni is Noor Aini, yes, from Leong Islamic Asset Management, and she also brings a wealth of experience. She's been very much involved on unit trust, fund management, operations, services, distribution, and also she herself, is a licensed Islamic financial planner. She's a unit trust consultant, so she has a total perspective, in terms of how does distribution dovetail with the industry and products. And at the far left of my side is Mr. Phang, very well known in the industry. He is involved in MFPC, he holds a very high position in MFPC in terms of the committee, and he has been involved on the financial planning services as well. So looking forward to your perspective in terms of client connection. So why are we here today, right? So just to set the perspective for our panel members, I think what we cannot, we need to underscore the importance of client management. So client management is actually a process of intermediation. You have the clients and investors on one side, and on the other end, you have the organization, the fund management, the products, and the services. So how do you bring the two together? So that is where the client connection becomes very, very important. And as we have heard this morning, the whole landscape of client connection is changing. So we have to respond to the changes that are happening. Now, if you can get the client connection right, you have effective client management services, that is where you can bring a lot of success. You bring a lot of success in terms of meeting clients' expectations, which are changing, meeting clients' needs, which are changing. And clients are also planning for their families, right? So that is where the success comes in if we have a very effective client connection. And on the other side is also a success for the industry, because that is where you can get your products and services across to investors. So we must never ever undermine the importance of client connection. And having said that, at the same time, as we have heard, the whole ecosystem is changing. It is no longer becoming like I have a product and I want to sell you a product. So those who are intermediating between clients and the fund management, the organization's products, services, they have to deal with so many changing facets of connecting with clients. So these would be like the UTCs, the relationship managers, the financial planners. Today they have to deal with so many aspects. Some of these aspects, I would say, is, for example, investor demographics are changing. You have the young investors coming in who are looking for different things. They have a longer investment journey. They're starting out on their life journey, right? And they want to make the right decisions to have a comfortable financial journey ahead. On the other end of the spectrum are what we call the more mature investors, which, you know, in the previous panel, they refer to the silver hat, but I've got Encik Muzni here, so I will not use that term. So on the other hand, you have the more mature investors, more mature clients. And what are they looking for? I would say that they are looking for having a comfortable retirement plan. They are looking for maybe aspects of wealth decumulation. They want to draw down on their investments to support their retirement, to support their journey at this stage of their life. So how do they do that? That's where client connection becomes quite critical. And then you also have, particularly with the more mature investors and clients, they will be looking for intergenerational wealth transfer. You know, they will be transferring wealth to their families, to their children. So they also have got to understand, how can we make this work? Then we also have the gig workers, right? The gig economy. And those who participate in the gig economy, they may have volatility in income coming in. And they have to look for practical solutions as well to support their journey in planning for themselves. Because this is where they really have to take ownership of their financial planning. And in between, you also have this growing class of high net worth investors, and where we would think that they would know about investing, but do they? And so the client connection comes in very critical, even for that segment of investors. We cannot assume that if one is a high net worth investor, they know everything about investment products, about capital markets, so on and so forth. To add to the complexity today of client connection, and I'm just trying to set out the perspective for our panel members to kick off the discussion, is the digital space. The medium in which we are connecting with clients is changing dramatically. And we heard that from the panel before us. And we have to respond to that. The pandemic actually was a catalyst for us to move onto the digital space. So these are things like in client connection, how do we respond, not only from the point of the distributors, from the point of the unit trust consultants or relationship managers, but also from the point of investors. How do we get them comfortable with doing things on a digital space? And last but not least, another complexity that we talk about is also behavioral biases. I think we heard this morning, clients have got behavioral biases. They may have a cognitive bias, which is the way they are getting information, the way they are digesting information. They may also have emotional biases. For example, what is their risk appetite, their tolerance for risk? How do they respond when there is market volatility? So as you can see, I just wanted to set out the framework for the complexity in terms of client connection. But I think before we get to the complexity, Alice, I'll get you to share with us, especially when you have one of the biggest agency forces in the industry, how do you work in the client connection? How do you prepare your distributors to have an effective client communication framework in place? Alice?
Thank you, Jaspil. I think Jaspil have explained very, very comprehensively on this client connection. Okay, so I will angle from the client connection part. Basically, in this financial landscape, the products in the market actually is getting more complex. Yeah. nowadays. So when we come to investment planning, basically we have some of the savior investor. They may actually choose to do it themselves, DIY themselves, and or with the help of some robo-advisory that they can get in the market. But however, when come to this DIY part, majority of these savior investor, they may find it is actually a very time-consuming process to do this DIY. Of course, in the other hand, we also have a group of investors. They may actually lack of knowledge and lack of skills in doing their own investment planning. So that's why they may need some unit trust consultant to give them some advices along the way. Yeah. So that's why unit trust consultants is actually playing a very important role, and I believe that moving forward, unit trust consultant will continue to play a very important role in investment planning. Okay, now talking about this, basically the unit trust company will come into place to properly train the unit trust consultant in terms of the knowledge and also in terms of skill set, inclusive of the soft skill set. Now, in this whole financial planning process, basically the unit trust consultant play a very important role. First is actually to identify the needs of the client or the needs of the investor, because each and every investor, they have their own very unique needs, okay? So that's why we need to properly train the unit trust consultant so that they can ask relevant questions, so that they can understand the investor's need, yeah, in detail. So once we have understand the investor needs, basically another next steps basically is to understand the risk tolerance of the client. Now, in this process, basically, the unit trust consultant need to do a proper assessment on the risk tolerance of the said client. Okay. Now, these two steps are very, very important. Okay. So they need to understand well, so that their investors will not have sleepless night. They shouldn't have sleepless night when they do their investment. Yeah. Okay. So that's very important. Now, after they have understand the needs, they actually understand the risk tolerance of the client. The next step basically is establish a plan. Okay, establish a plan, proper plan for the client. Okay, by understand all these points. Now, when come to the investment plan, yeah, in the short run, it may not be giving the investor a quick return. Okay, because many of investors, they may have a wrong perception. They thought that they can have a quick return. But if, let's say, for instance, the investor can understand how the saving and the investing works, yeah? So basically, I think over a longer period, they can actually gain the benefits of doing the proper money management and also the investment planning. So now, in this part, right, basically it's very crucial for both the UTC and the investors to understand their plan well. Because what we realize over the period is that basically some unhappiness happen or some misunderstanding happen is because this part actually mutually did not actually do a very thorough process. Yeah? If, let's say, for instance, if the unit trust consultant elaborate well, okay, and set the expectation right based on the client's needs, their risk tolerance, and also the plan that they are going in. So it can actually eliminate a lot of conflicts in the future. And at the same time, the investor also need to play a part because they need to understand what they are going in. Okay, they must understand the plan that being set up, how it will work. Yeah. Okay. Now, once the plan have been in place, yeah, basically the part where need to do thoroughly is actually the regular review. Yeah. So, and occasionally, maybe circumstances change. They may need to rebalance the investment portfolio that they have. Yeah, and especially when there are life changes, like for instance, the client is getting newborn, new family, they are getting married, or they are having promotion, or maybe they lost the job. So that's where I think they need to come back to the investment plan again to do a proper review basing on the current situation of the client. Okay, some rebalancing or readjustment or realignment need to be done then. Yeah. Now, over this whole process, basically, the UTC is actually building the trust, okay, with the client. So the unit trust, the integrity of the unit trust in carrying out this whole process is really very crucial in building a trust over a long-term period. Because for investment plan, it's not just 1 or 2 years. It can be up to 10 years or more than 10 years, yeah, depending on the time horizon that the investor has when they set up the investment plan. Now, in a successful investment journey, basically, as I mentioned just now, it needs both effort from the UTCs and also from the investors themselves. Now, they can do this part easily is actually leveraging on the digital platform. So let's say, for instance, when doing a regular portfolio review, the UTC actually can effortlessly or can do it effectively by using the digital platform. Okay? And on the other hand, the investor also need to know their portfolio, right? So the unit trust management company also can provide a digital platform for the investors so that they can actually do review at any time, anywhere at their convenience. So that they know what is their portfolio status as and when they wanted to understand that. And through this digital platform, the investors also can get some of the investment information through the digital platform. So it's very easy. Yeah. Okay. Another part where the unit trust company play a role is actually to educate the investors. So that's why we have a lot of like seminars, talks, you know, or even the direct communication channel with the investors so that we can actually channel some of this investment knowledge to our investor, including the social media as well. Yep. Okay. Next is actually, I think, another part which is we understand that the investor have different investment needs. So that's why the management company maybe can play a role is actually to have a wider range of product and services so that can suit different investors' needs. Yeah. So I think that's whole connection come together among these three parties. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alice. That is very fundamental, some of the issues that you have raised in terms of client connection, and some of the key points, you know, that I took away from what you said is the fact that, firstly, investors have a responsibility in terms of effective connection because it is their money that they're investing, and they have a responsibility in terms of reviewing what they have invested in, tracking the performance, I presume, or whether it meets their investment needs or not, and whether their risk tolerance has been properly fleshed out by the UTC. So, and that will happen at the point of onboarding, right, to properly understand particularly their emotional biases, understanding their tolerance towards risk. So thank you for that. With that, I want to also mention we've got a lot of questions already coming in. Thank you for those questions and keep them coming. And, you know, and we can post it to the panel. We've got varied skills at the panel today. With that, I'd like to move to maybe Muzni. You've got a very varied experience. All right. You were in a state fund where the profile of your investors were very different.
Correct.
And the motivation for their investing was also very different, you know, in terms of meeting socio-economic objectives as well. And then you've also have experience in the Middle East, in Saudi. And I would presume that the profile of investors that you would have been looking in would have been probably the high net worth investors.
Correct.
Right? So it is very different. And today you have a mix, right, of both retail and high net worth as well. So, but I am sure that regardless of the different kinds of segments of investors, there will be certain fundamentals, that will stand out, regardless who you're dealing with, that we all may need to observe. So can I get you to share your views on the fundamentals of client connection?
Sure, Jasbir. Thank you very much for that. I would like to say that, either it is a high net worth individual or a retail investor. In either case, one thing you must not forget is that high net worth individual and or retail investor is still a person that wants to be served, that has unfulfilled needs, and yearns for empathy. Okay? And the level of servicing may be different from one extreme to the other, but the basic rule still applies. Alice talked about it just now, assessing the client's risk tolerance, okay, and understanding his or her needs, and providing a matching solution. So those are the basic fundamentals, irrespective whether you are a high net worth individual or the client is a retail investor for that matter. But however, I would like to share with us all today here by going to a small presentation slide that I've prepared. If I can have my slide, yeah, it's on, all right? So if you look at it, I've done something a little bit scientific today, by applying technology. We're talking about technology so much. So what I did was I've Googled top qualities of a good salesperson over the internet and look at the first 5 websites that appeared from the search result and compile all the qualities in each of these 5 websites. And these are the first, I would say, most common 5 qualities that came out. I know it's not very scientific as I claim it to be, but, well, it gives a story. If you look at it, the 5 qualities are empathy, drive, being likable, knowledgeable, and trustworthy. So this came out across all the 5 websites, being the top 5 answer that you face. Now, all the qualities shown, save item number 2, which is drive or passion, relates to client centricity or ability to connect with the client. Okay. Now, if I were to look at each of one of them and start with empathy, why is empathy important? Have you ever been to a meeting where you are talking and talking and talking, explaining to your client why you think this product is good for them, but you cannot help to feel that they have blank out. They seem uninterested and uncommitted. Well, Teddy Roosevelt put it very fittingly. Your client or my client don't care how much we know until they know how much we care about them. So really, it's not about how much, whether I know where the economy is heading, what's happening in Ukraine, what's up in China. It's all about how much can I show that I care about them. Okay, that's the starting point. That's what counts. And to show that you care, you have to start, by knowing who they are. When I say who they are, I mean, you have to put yourself in their shoes and what values they have, what values that it is important to them. And that's when you start to, break the ice and understand, their likes, their dislikes, and the things that is dear and important to them. So that's empathy. That's the most important point that I would like to, part away with. And the second item here is likable. This goes without saying. It's as straightforward as it can be. If someone likes you, they are more likely to trust you. As straightforward as it gets, right? It is hard enough to trust a person you don't know. It is harder to trust a person you don't like. Have you put a trust in a person you don't like? I doubt it, right? So it goes without saying. If someone likes you, they are more likely to trust you, which puts you in an advantage position. Okay? A good way to build likability is to identify connections with the client. So that's one way. So before you go and meet the client, do a bit of homework, search his name up in the Google or whatever, look at his social media account if he has any, and try to understand his likes, dislikes, hobbies, values, passion. So when you do go and meet him for the first time, at least you have something common to talk about. Okay, that is a good way to make the person like you. This is common. It doesn't have to be Malaysian, even Saudis or Arabs for that matter. These are common across. Okay. Next, I would say is knowledgeable, but here is a bit of a twist when it comes to knowledge. One assumes when you say knowledgeable, it's about product knowledge. While that is important, no doubt, you need to know what you're selling. But more and more importantly, you also need to know knowledge about your client. Okay? So, client connection is all about, as I said earlier, client centricity. And client centricity selling is all about knowing your clients. The more you know about their problems, the more you're able to provide the right solutions. And that is all it is about, is giving them the right solution. And the last item I would like to put is about, let me see if I can get this on, trustworthy. Okay? This is again at the straightforward point. Do not overpromise and underdeliver. Trust is of utmost importance. People buy from people they trust. At first they have to like you, then they will trust you, then they will, buy from you. Great salesperson build trust with the ability to ask the right question, listen, and provide solution. Okay? A solution that are aligned to the client's need and goals. I think we have to move away from the old paradigm of, we've learned the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. I think the paradigm has shifted to, I call it SAFE. Solution, as for S. Instead of product, it's solution. Instead of promotion, then it should be, as AA is for what? As A, solution, advice. Then instead of price, it's value. And instead of promotion, it's education. So these are the 4 new paradigms I want to think of, So the most important is about moving from product mindset into solution mindset. Okay, what solution are you providing? So originally we were on a product mindset. We're trying to push product. Then I start to challenge myself and all my salespeople is that what we're doing is providing service. So when you say you provide service, it's no longer about the product, but it's what is the value add, what is the journey that we want the client to feel. So that's service. But now the new paradigm is not even that. It's about what solution you're providing to the client. Okay, so it's 2 steps forwards now. Okay, so all in all, I think Jabri, you mentioned it earlier, and I think Alice, you mentioned it earlier. Client connectivity is about being there for your client throughout his or her journey in life. So it's not a one-off thing. It's not going there, selling a product, and that's it, bye-bye. You're not going to meet him or her again. It's about staying there, for the long run. Jasbir and I, 22 years, and here we are again. So it's for the long run. The more you know about the client, at what life stage he or she is in, it's easier for you then to make that connection. And once it's easier to make that connection, then it's easier for you to provide the solution. We talk about understanding the client risk tolerance. It's not just about at the point of onboarding. Yes, it is important at the point of onboarding, but if you go through the journey of the client, you need to keep on updating the client risk tolerance and their profile based on where they are in life. So if a person is at the beginning of the career, he may be a bit more a risk taker and want to see investing growing faster. But once he has children, then he may be a bit more relax about his risk tolerance. Once he's getting to retirement age, then he'll be very ultra conservative. I'm stereotyping here. It may not be the same for every person, but in general, that's how it is. I'll pause here and give it back to Jasbir if there's anything.
Thank you, Muzni. So I think what you have highlighted, those are the fundamental traits, in terms of whoever it is that's connecting with the clients. And I think what we are coming to realize is client connection is both an art and a science. Science in terms of, your documentation, it is your prospectuses, it is your forms for onboarding, that comes I would say the scientific part. But at the same time, understanding the clients, and based on the traits that you just highlighted, show that it is an art as well. But based on the 5 that you shared, I just wanted to find out is that where does communication come in these traits that you shared, in terms of effective communication? Because as you know, there are different profiles of investors, so that would require different communication skills, different engaging skills. So I just wanted to get your views on that. And the other one, I was also thinking, and I take this cue from SC Chairman's opening remarks. He talked about conduct. And he shared some statistics in terms of actions taken. He talked about conduct and investor protection. So where does ethics come in the traits that you have shared?
Yes, okay. When it comes to communication, I think at all 5 levels, there need to be some level of communication that you need to make with the client. But again, communication is unique on its own. As a salesperson, you don't want... Yes, you're supposed to know about your product, and yes, you're supposed to know about your client, but you need to balance when to say and when not to say things. It's an art. If you go on having all this information and you're babbling about all this over to your client, and the client would feel as if that overwhelmed by all this information, and they feel that maybe this is not for me. That's not what you're trying to get. The process is about educating the client on the needs, their investment need, their financial needs. And you must first understand at what level is the client. As I said, I've dealt with high net worth investors, I've dealt with retail investors. Doesn't mean that high net worth investors are sophisticated as they may. They understand about financial planning and financial products. They may not. And retail investors don't assume that they know nothing about investing. So the trick is to understand where they are. And I use this simple philosophy: ask and listen. It's not about you talking, but it's about asking the right question and listening, the answers that you're going to get from the client. And from there, you'll be able to gauge the level of risk tolerance or understanding of the client. So that's a trick on its own, just in trying to communicate effectively to the clients.
And I think that's also very fundamental, because you cannot overwhelm or underwhelm your clients or potential investors. It must be at the right pitch. So it comes back to really knowing your client, right? And it takes time to build that relationship. And we've got a question that's coming in, and I'm going to get Puan Nuraini to share her views. And perhaps I could start with one of the questions that has come in to kick off the discussion is, how do you foster long-term client-consultant relationship? Because as we said that, I think it's no longer just a product-centric business, it is a client-centric business. And to have a client-centric business, you must know the client in the long term. But as you know, sometimes there are things that happen and you lose that connection. So maybe, Puan Nuraini, I get you to share your own experiences in the client connection, and how do you sustain or build or enable a long-term relationship?
Okay. Thank you, Jasbir. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to everyone. I think it's very kind of Jasbir to pose this question to me. However, just to share a bit, in Hon Leong, our group tagline is reaching out. Now, it is very, it is very aligned with the FIMM discussion this week on connectivity with client. Now, what we have done based on the current market condition and based on my 30 years in the industry, the troubling times that we are facing now may be not common to a lot of our investors. However, I think most of the panelists here have gone through many such times. Now, for this kind of current situation, the communication and connecting to client is very important. So our focus is basically under reaching out into, we split into 4. One is we advise our consultant, we advise our client to continue and increase the communication and engagement on their investment with us, because that is very important. If clients doesn't probe on their investment and ask about their asset, then there is a gap between understanding your wealth management planning, where is the situation now, and what will happen in the next few years. Because I think giving assurance to our investors and to our clients that, you know, we hold their hand, we give them the right advice, that is utmost important. As mentioned, Cik Muzni just now, I think out of the 4 or 5 that he has considered, I'm only focusing on 2. One is the trustworthiness of the fund manager, because it's very important that the maintenance and the trust between the fund manager and we so-called asset owners is maintained. Because for us in Hon Leong, we do not consider investors or as client, but they are actually asset owners. They are the one who hold the units in your unit trust. Their money is in your funds. Their concern is about their wealth management planning. So how do you give that assurance? So secondly, in our strategy in improving communication is we introduce digital platform. But by introducing digital platform, it doesn't mean that consultant take 2 steps away or 3 steps away and say, you go to our digital platform, you get all your information, and you make your own assessment. I think that is not proper, because for us, the digital platform that in the industry have provided is to enhance the processing your transaction, getting more information, but the communication and the engagement with client must still continue. Because I was talking to Alice just now, even with digital platform, the warm face, the empathy, the way you talk to your client, listening to their grouses, listening to their concern, that's utmost important. And secondly is not everybody is digital savvy, right? Me for one, I learn from my children, from my peers, however, I still consider myself, not as savvy as maybe Cik Muzni or Mr. Phang here, but we have to ensure effective communication, and with communication via digital, it cannot be so serious, it cannot be so technical. You have to add a little bit of edutainment, you have to add a little bit of e-learning, and I think that helps many levels of investor, be it those in their, the Gen Y, Gen Z, whatever, and baby boomers like us. So from me, I think that is the focus. Thank you.
Okay, so what I remember is, someone had mentioned, is people always remember how you made them feel, right? So when you, and this, how you feel as an investor, as a client, how you feel cannot always come from the machine, cannot come from the digital space, right? Because it is that. It's in fact, they call it artificial intelligence, right? So, but it is the human touch. It is connecting with your clients, and when you have the traits, of empathy, of listening, of communicating, and communicating well, understanding what they want, that's how the client is going to feel. And I think that is very important. I mean, that's what I think is very important that we need to take note of. So Muzni, I'm going to use your phrase of SAVE and lead to the discussion with Mr. Phang. SAVE: solutions, advice, value, and education. And I think one of the things that has come out over time is that investors and clients, they they are looking for more advice, more holistic kind of advice, because their life encompasses many aspects. You've got the short term, you've got the medium term, the long term. It changes all the time. And at the same time, right, there are many competing products that is competing for the wallet. So how do you get a holistic view of where you are going to, or how you're going to allocate assets, right? That suits your needs at the different phases of your life. So with that, with a greater focus today also on holistic investment-based advice, Phang, from the MFPC perspective or as a financial planning perspective, would you like to share how do you see client connection?
Thank you, Jasper. Being the last speaker, the fourth speaker, I don't have to cover much, you know. I can, I learned from all of it. And indeed, all the other speakers have said it so well. And I was so amazed by saying, like when we started the financial planning courses at the time, the lecturer always throw us a question saying that when is the right things to do, when you sell things that the clients want or you sell things the client needs, you know? So the needs versus the want, the devils versus the angel, right? So at the time, definitely being a professional, we want to uphold the needs for the client, all right? However, the client's been bombarded, like what Jasper is saying, or you know, in the industry, they expose themselves with so much of products. And what most they are talking about in this era, information is overload. So they are unable to actually digest it and making a very informed decision. I think this is the challenge that we have now. So, I mean, borrowing from what all the panel speakers have said, I think I can take it from, sum up as two words, you know, the 2C. How much you know the client. How care are you towards your client? The client-centric, or rather we call it client-centricity, how you really able to touch their heart, like what Jasper was saying. The feeling finding, instead of just a pure fact finding, only very hard, you know. You really know the aspirations and objective of investing, you know. To what extent they are really put their hard-earned money aside for 15, 20 over years, and you keep on saying top up, but then is it the right time? And the market, it couldn't actually rebound. Should I actually, you know? So, and the second C that I always put in priority is communication, as like what you guys are saying. How can we jive the two together? Centricity and communication. May I have my slide, please? Yeah, so that I can just sum up, you know, the panelists have said. It's so good that have the industry, panelists that they set the setting. And in fact, like what Alice said, the step 1 to the step 6, you know, this is, I think, be it as a UTC or advisor, I think it's our duty to actually understand the client from onset. And I think that part itself, the first step, right, is all about the aspiration, the goal, and the tolerance, you know. And I think that is the pillar that we need to be uphold it, all right? Then, and then that's where the Muzni talk about the solution, you know. That's where the tactical aspect, you know, the portfolio managers come into play and understand how much resources that they have, what is the existing asset allocation, you know, do they actually require some spare cash, you know, for this raining day and whatnot. The utmost important is not just a one-off service, you're doing ongoing consultancy and advisory. So the rebalance and switching, like what Alice has said, is so important to come back again, see when is the right time or what the clients really want us to focus on. And I think, like what Jasper also touching on, do we actually having a right compliant process, because clients always forget but never forgive, end of the day. Yeah. So do you have something to actually not proving themselves until guilty, but then we just want to sit down with the client, go through the raining day and the sunshine day, and make sure the client achieve the objective end of the day. Yeah, I think this is what we should be focusing on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Phang, for that. And we've got the questions coming in. I think maybe what we can do is we can take on some of the questions. And this is something that we talked about. The pandemic was a catalyst for digital channels. And we spoke a lot, I think in the previous panel discussion, about this whole space, virtual space of connecting with clients. And it's also been highlighted that one of the biggest challenges that the distributors had or relationship managers had was actually connecting with clients at that point in time. So the question that comes in is, clients are utilizing online channels today, right? And therefore, how can the intermediation or the person who's involved on the intermediating space, for example, like the UTCs, the relationship managers, financial planners, so how can they add value to the client? And this comes to the topic of, upskilling, reskilling, and being relevant in today's space. So maybe, Alice, I would like to ask you, what do you think needs to be done in helping on the distribution side to leverage on technology, and also what kind of skills are necessary for them for on the distribution and connecting with clients to do that effectively and in a very meaningful way?
Thanks, Jaspil. Okay, it's very true. Before the pandemic, actually a lot of consultants or the intermediary, they are so worried about digitalization because their thought is that with digitalization, will the intermediary be, there's no value add or things like that. So they actually have this worry. But when this pandemic come, we realize that a lot of people getting more receptive to digitalization. Basically, digitalization is not taking over the role of a consultant. Because as mentioned just now with the panel speakers over here, digitalization is a way to go because we can increase a lot of efficiency, can save a lot of resources. But the consultants still play a very important role because we are not robots. The clients are not robots. So they need someone to understand their needs and connect with them and engage with them. So that's why consultants need to continue to actually upskill, enhance their knowledge, continue to learn. That's why FIMM have this requirement of CPD points every year. I think it's a very good exercise, so that every one of us will keep up, our skill set and also knowledge, so that we can actually support our client. So I think a very important part the consultant need to play is that we need to actually engage with our unit holders, our investors, and then understand where they are, their positions, understand their situation, so we can come out or we can give advice accordingly based on their situation. And the most important part at the value that the consultant needs to have is that their integrity, okay, and their compassion towards the unit holder. So this can actually build a very long-lasting relationship with the client, and at the same time helping the investors to achieve their financial goals. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alice, for that. Just picking up further on in the area of digital client connection, it's here to stay. We acknowledge that, and it's going to deepen. And here there has been a focus on how UTCs and distributors need to adapt to this new environment. Cik Muzni, I want to ask you, what about how can the fund management companies or the unit trust management companies do to support the distribution? Do you think that the fund management companies and the unit trust companies have to invest more in terms of technology and coming up with digital client management systems to help on the client connection side?
Definitely. That's a definite yes. I mean, let me just start by saying this. Technology is here to assist us in doing the business, but it's not to substitute the business itself. You know, when I was a lot younger, when I joined the industry, we only had fax machine. And suddenly we have emails. Oh, I thought I was going to be very rich, spamming all my clients with emails, asking them to subscribe to the funds that I'm managing. Didn't work. And then we have WhatsApp. Also, we have website first. Oh, again, I'll put up a beautiful website and people will come to me and subscribe to all my funds. Didn't work. Then we have WhatsApp. Again, I can be connected to my client 24/7 through WhatsApp. Now I'm still here and not that rich. You know, I'm not rich yet. Okay. Okay, but the point here is that yes, as a client, all this technology advancement is there to help facilitate the business. And as a client, if I'm a client, I would like to see, for example, my asset dashboard. Where have I invested? What's the profile look like? And you know, where I'm making money, when I'm not, and whatnot. And if I have it online, it'll be very helpful. Again, also for the RMs or for the relationship managers for the UTC, having that dashboard and going to the client and being able to show it to the client is also a tool that's going to be very helpful. So yes, digital investment by all the UTC, either be it on the front end or the back end, is very important, and it is going to be a norm in the future, which we cannot escape.
Okay, thanks for the input. So it looks like, you know, when it comes to the digital space, it's actually a partnership. You know, in terms of the players, the industry players, the UTMCs, the distributors, fund managers, they need to also invest effectively in technology and client management solutions, and they need to then equip their UTCs to use that, you know, for the benefit of the client and the industry overall. I've got another question that's coming in. It's about the changing landscape and clients' expectations of services. So I think one of the key changes in the landscape is also in terms of the new space that's coming out on ESG, on SRI, right? So maybe, Noorani, would you like to share, how would you equip in terms of client connection who may not understand this area, but to get them to see the value on ESG and SRI investing?
Thanks, Jasmine. Okay. I think basically when you talk about ESG, you talk about SRI, I think everyone want to be Greta Thunberg, right? But we are not there yet. She's still very young. She still have a lot of plans on ESG and SRI, and she's promoting for her younger generation. Now, with regards to what Jasmine has mentioned and my panel of speaker has mentioned about digitalization, now, part of the process of ESG and SRI and sustainability is moving towards digitalization, where we provide information, platform on transaction, advice or connection with our clients. So it is part of the business in fund management where we want to be sustainable enough and to promote ESG going forward on processing and also sustainability in terms of we still being there in the next 20, 30 years. So with regards to a lot of our fund managers in industry, we have a lot of ESG and fund initiative towards SRI. However, a lot of education still need to be going down to the asset owners, the investors, because whether we like it or not, investor wants to promote ESG and be participating in SRI. But at the same time, they also want to put food on the table. So they also want to make sure that whatever they're investing, regardless whether it's ESG and SRI, there's some kind of confidence given to them that they will be still making income, they'll still making profits from the investment. So how do we do this? The only way to do it is, apart from us coming out with our digital platform, the consultants need to also be tech savvy, learning from from the many digital platforms, convey the message, give assurance, hold the hand, and give them comfort. I think that's very important. That's right.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I've just been reminded we are running very short of time. So in wrapping up, and Mr. Phang, I'll start with you. And I'll pose the question to the other panel members very quickly. What do you see as the best practices in client connection?
I think, as I said, client centricity is like, I know, it's the utmost important as, I mean, as an advisor, your bloodline is your clientele, then they bring you the AUM and whatnot. So I think put priority, spending quality time, going through the whole process, and finding the right solution, that is the most important. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I'll pose that question to any of the panel members. 1, 2 words. What do you think are the best practices that the client connection should have?
I'll give you a short answer. It's about knowing your client's need and how to service them. Full stop.
I must concur with Muzni. It is more so and more important in these troubled times that we so-called see, because there are still silver linings coming towards after this pandemic.
From me, I think it's very short. Just a few words. Take care of the investors.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I really want to thank the panel members today. In closing, I think what we can see is connecting with clients is a huge responsibility, and it is a very important responsibility. It leads to the overall success of the business and also success in regard to the clients. It's not an easy space today. There are lots of exciting things that are changing. And I think in moving forward, everyone needs to reskill, to understand, and to make sure that they are meeting the changing demands of the landscape, the changing profile of investors, and how they can use technology best to serve the needs of the investor and also to serve the needs of the distributors, because the use of technology creates higher levels of productivity as well, in terms of connecting with your clients. So with that, thank you very much for sharing all your thoughts and being here today. And it's been such great insights that we've had from each of the panel members. So with that, Anita, I'll pass it back to you.